So good morning, class. Today we will be discussing research methods. And the last time we met, we discussed research theory, where we try to learn the relevance of theory in research. Today, our objective is to go ahead and then look into research methodology, where we explain qualitative research methodology. So by the time we finish our session, I would have gone into these particular issues. I recently did a lecture for the School of Graduate Studies on qualitative research, and that was quite well accepted and received by the students. So I'm going to share the same lecture with you because it tends to, in a nutshell, explain what qualitative research is. Then after that, we'll look at some of the types of qualitative research that exist. My sessions for today will cover 4 topics: qualitative research defined, key features of qualitative research, types of qualitative research, and then I will listen to your questions and then continue. We are looking at chapter 6 of our book, and we are getting closer to the end of our sessions. I think we are left with about only 2 sessions more. So I hope to cover all the things that we need to learn before we round up. Okay. Please, if you have any question, you could actually post it in the chat room. I'll be monitoring it. So let's look at qualitative research defined. This is the fruit of qualitative research, a story written by Patton 2002 that tries to explain and give a snapshot what qualitative research is about. The story says that there was once a man in a country with no fruit trees. A scholar, he spent a great deal of time reading. He often came across references to fruit. The descriptions enticed him to undertake a journey to experience fruit for himself. He went to the marketplace and inquired where he could find the land of fruit. After much searching, he located someone who knew the way. After a long and arduous journey, he came to the end of the directions and found himself at the entrance of a large apple orchard. It was springtime and the apple trees were in blossom. The scholar entered the orchard and expectantly pulled off a blossom and put it in his mouth. He liked neither the texture of the flower nor its taste. He went quickly to another tree and sampled another blossom, then another and another. Each blossom, though quite beautiful, was distasteful to him. He left the orchard and returned to his home country, reporting to his fellow villagers that fruit was a much overrated food. So this is the fruit of the qualitative research preamble. Now, the question that comes into mind is, what do you think happened to the scholar? What do you think happened to the scholar? Let me get... Those of you, what do you think happened to the scholar? If you want to respond to it, you can unmute yourself and respond. What do you think happened to the scholar? Felix, you are the one I was chatting with earlier. What do you think happened to the scholar? Okay, any response? My Zoom friends. What do you think happened to the scholar? Yes, Felix, let me hear.
For me, I think the scholar is actually looking into the different types of fruits that exist.
Okay, but remember he went to the place. Let me show you the preamble again. He went to the town and then he actually entered. He went during springtime. He was looking for an apple tree. He went to the orchard and started pulling off blossoms and putting it in his mouth. And when he went back, he said the apple was an overrated food. So what? Yeah, Emma, yes, you can answer. Emma.
No, yes. I think the scholar was disappointed.
Why do you think he was disappointed?
Because each one he took and then put in his mouth tasted differently from what he thought. He had
But what did he actually put in his mouth?
He put in blossoms instead of the apple fruit.
Okay, Jemima, you are right. He put in the blossom, so instead of apple fruit. So what do you think happened to him? Did he eat apple?
No, he didn't eat apple.
So his narration or his going back to the town and telling them that the food was a much overrated food, what do you think really happened?
Okay, so I'll say that based on the fact that he tasted what he was not supposed to taste, he had a different opinion to give.
Good.
If he had really tasted the apple, he would have gotten a different view. But because he ate the blossoms, he got a different view that it was not tasteful as it's
So you
usually.
tend to realize that people tend to base their information they share on their experiences. You realize it?
Yes, sir.
The experiences that, So Emma, you realize that the experiences that he had is what he used to come to a conclusion that he had eaten an apple, but he didn't even know what an apple is, and he actually, he went during springtime, and springtime was supposed to have flowers, not supposed to have the apple itself. Fruit. So there was a very narrow view on it. Unable to recognize the difference between the spring blossom and the summer fruit, the scholar never realized that he had not even experienced the fruit he was looking for. And his view was a very narrow view based on his own experiences. That's what we can actually say. That's one thing that Patton emphasizes here concerning how qualitative research is. So one thing that we need to experience, and I'm going to use that preamble to explain it. One thing that you need to experience and understand is that qualitative researchers study things in their natural settings. That is one. Attempting to make sense of and interpret the phenomenon in terms of the meanings people bring to them. So they first of all study a phenomenon, and the phenomenon are usually placed in the natural settings. Number three, the qualitative researchers are drawn to uncover, unearth, or interpret or make sense of the meanings people associate to the phenomenon. So in qualitative research, you are dealing with people. You are also dealing with you are dealing with people. You are dealing with natural settings. You are dealing with meanings, and you are dealing with the phenomenon itself. Good. Qualitative also researchers, according to Patton, also seek to understand situations or phenomena in the uniqueness as part of the context and the interactions that exist between. So you can't actually separate the apple itself from the tree, or the tree from the orchard that he went to experience it. And you can't actually also separate the way or the manner in which the apple grows within the context itself, or the setting, the timing. He went at springtime and he was seeing an aspect of the apple tree, not the apple fruit itself. So one thing that qualitative researcher does is that he needs to understand the phenomenon, the context in which the phenomenon occurs, and the interactions. Because our scholar didn't understand the context that he was in springtime, the plant itself, when it's growing in springtime, will only show flowers. He couldn't really have a better understanding of the interaction that he was having with her. He had seen the apple tree. He had been there himself, but without a good understanding of timing and how timing affects how the plants, the apple itself grows, he had a poor perspective, or a limited perspective of what an apple looks like. So in qualitative research, one question that we ask is now, what is the phenomenon you are studying? So like in this case, a fruit. But you need to understand that what is your understanding about the fruit? What is the understanding about that phenomenon that you are trying to study? What is an apple? So in this case, what is an apple? Now, where the natural settings, where was the fruit? When did the scholar go there? So where was the fruit? Where was it located? And when did the scholar go there? What meanings exist concerning the fruit? You realize that the scholar came with meanings about what he had heard. He had heard some certain pockets of information about the fact that it seems that apple is a very rich and highly rated fruit, and he needs to come and find out what this apple is. And then what factors influence the meanings? He didn't appreciate that fact, the fact that timing, or the timing you go there, the timing that you enter the apple garden, you end up experiencing something else. And lastly, who has the meanings is the scholar. So a qualitative research is an inquiry that is grounded in the assumptions that individuals or people construct social reality in the form of meanings and the interpretations. And these constructions tend to be transitional and then situational. What are we trying to say? When people go into the world and they try to make sense of the world, their sense of the world is in a transitory state, and it's also situational. What the circumstances that they experience defines and redefines constantly their perception about the world. If you, today you wake up in the morning, because of coronavirus, your understanding about society has changed. If you are not experienced this, your views about contagious diseases, your views concerning how the world is and how you go about your activities would have been very, very different. So the reality that you are going through is also being constructed by your experiences and the meanings that you associate with it. So in qualitative research, we come to when we are doing research for a qualitative perspective, we need to appreciate one, the phenomenon, the natural settings in which the phenomenon we want to study takes place, the people who form meanings or construct meanings about this particular phenomenon, and then the fact that these meanings that they are constructing and interpretations that they are constructing is transitory and situational. If certain circumstances change, their views could also be changed or be modified. Okay, now let's do another quiz here. What do you see here? Those of you who are on your muted, what do you see here? Jemima, Marilyn, Felix, and Co, and Daniel. What do you see here? What do you see here? Remember what we just learned about qualitative research. So what do you see? I'm not saying tell me what qualitative research is, but what do you see here?
So I see chairs,
Okay.
but then they are different type of chairs.
There are different types of chairs. So let's take this is society.
Yes.
So you have seen one. Society has different type of chairs. That's one level of meaning. What other meanings are you seeing? Mimi, what meanings are you seeing? Yeah.
Different kinds of
Sorry.
Authority.
Sorry. I didn't hear you. Okay, Philip. Those of you are.
Sure, yes, I see a sword used to model a chair or something.
So you see, very interesting.
Yes.
Philip says that he sees swords which have been used to model a chair. Okay, okay. So Jemima was talking about he sees chairs, and somebody says I see swords made and we have been used to model a chair. Okay. Now all of you are saying this is based on your interpretation of your social reality. Yes, I want. Yes. Who else can see something else?
Sir, please, I see the Queen of England and two other people.
You see the Queen of England and two other people. Okay, that's all you see. Interesting.
I see chairs that have different methods attached to them. One is a throne, the others are ordinary chairs.
One is a throne and the other one is a throne and one is the other is ordinary chairs. Okay. Chairs, so you are saying that chairs have got their own. Hey, all the other chairs are ordinary chairs. Really?
No, they have a dining chair, an executive chair, and then I think.
Now you are speaking. Okay, good. Okay, so one interesting thing that I can say, Mini SL has actually said that she sees Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones. That's interesting. So it depending on what you see, what you understand about society, you may see something different. Actually, what you are seeing here as the sword is from the television series called Game of Thrones. So because Rukmi is quite conversant with that particular TV show, her mind went straight to the fact that what she sees is Game of Thrones, the movie from the TV series called Game of Thrones, and the Queen is standing by it, which is actually very, very, very interesting. So what I'm realizing is that all of you are interpreting it based on your social reality. If you take what Jemima was saying, Jemima was just drawn to the fact that what she sees is just chess, and this is more about the function, the function of the object you are seeing. Then we realized another gentleman ended up adding that the chairs have got meanings. So you're seeing that there's one which is a throne, one which is an executive chair, one which is a chair for more of a lounge, and one which is like a dining chair. Or yeah, so that's why you see the chairs and their uses, their purpose of the chairs. And that person was also royalty, just the royalty. So that that was more important. So do you realize that in society, when you look at society, your eyes or your social reality, your understanding about reality filters what you want to be able to say, filters the meanings you are constructing. So that is what you see, and that is how, when you get to the field, you are going to meet your respondents in qualitative research. A qualitative researcher should know that the world that the respondent or the person you are interviewing is seeing is being filtered through his social understanding. It's being filtered through his previous understanding. So there are certain things that you will see, obviously, that person will not see. It is through your inquiry process that the person even unravels and comes to even have a better understanding of what he's seeing and then shares with you. Your objective as a qualitative researcher is not to change that reality the person is having. It's to just capture and make sense of what the person is saying. I hope you understand me. So if we come back to what we want to put in a summary, in agreement with everybody who contributed, Rukmi, Martin, Jemima, Mimi, and Philip, what we see here is that we do not just sit, if you want to look at the overall meaning as a researcher, what you actually observed was the first three, and this is my conclusion. So this is what we call analysis. Your observation is first put together, then what does your observation imply leads to what you say, what have you analyzed from the data? So in the data, we could see in different things that there are different chairs in society. Some chairs are reserved in society. That's what one person said, that you see a queen by a chair. You may not sit until society has given way. That is actually true. In some chairs, you can't sit in some environments, in some situations, you cannot sit before grace is said. So you have to wait till grace is said before you sit. Now, to be able to sit, you need to internalize the taboos of the context. That means that the culture and why we do what we do. So you don't just get up and sit at any place. We sit on a dining table chair because we want to dine. We sit on a lounge chair because we may find ourselves in a lounge and we are in a waiting area. We sit on a classroom chair because we find ourselves in the classroom. So when we place a chair, ideally, the position of chair should tell us the function they are trying to, the chair is trying to support or play there. We don't put a lounge chair in a classroom knowing that students will slouch and fall asleep. You put chairs that relatively is supposed to make them comfortable, but it's also supposed to let them sit upright so that they can pay attention and have concentration on what the lecturer is teaching. If you come to see a hotel chair that is for watching TV and just relaxing, you realize that it's even in the classroom setting, it might not fit the setting. It might not fit the setting. It might not fit the setting. So every chair has its purpose and has its meaning. In a nutshell, what we can say is that we do not just sit because we find a chair or a seat. Our sit has a meaning. Our seat has a meaning. Those of you who are married or who are attempting to marry, when you go on your wedding day and go before the priest to get married, or go before any person who's going to bless it, there is a place you are supposed to sit as the man, and there is a place the woman is supposed to sit as the woman. And there's a place that's reserved for the family of the bride and the family of the groom. You can't just sit anywhere. So every seat has a meaning. Every seat has a meaning. Okay. So in qualitative research, our purpose is to describe variation, describe and explain relationship, to describe even individual experiences and describe what the experiences could be within a group. So every time we do qualitative research, we try to describe what is happening in the context. We take the context and the natural settings into play or into consideration. We try to also explain the relationships that may be occurring. Number two, when we do qualitative research, we try to use instruments that are more flexible than quantitative, because we need to be able to get into an understanding of what is happening there. So we use methods such as interviews, observations, documents, and audiovisual material to capture the reality we are observing, to capture the reality we want to unearth, to capture the reality we seek to describe. Lastly, qualitative researchers have to be aware of their own orientations and biases or experiences and personal interaction that they have within the context. Now, let me just give a very simple example. There was a time that I was doing a study on why do taxi drivers or cab drivers remove the headrest from the from the seats of the cars they drive. Now, I went to a particular locality in Accra here called Atomic. That time it was Atomic Junction. And I went there to actually interview the taxi rank members there. The taxi rank is an environment in which all taxi drivers park their car. And it's usually supposed to be a station point where people come to board taxis and go to a particular place. Now, when I went to the taxi rank, they told me that there's a particular route. And I asked them that, I was the first person I interviewed, told me that he employs on a particular route. That particular route that he employs, he works on is from Atomic Junction to Atomic Junction at on the Legon Road to the Atomic itself, meaning that there's a small locality or suburb called Haicho and then Atomic. So he flies on that road. So from the junction, he goes to Haicho, then goes to the Atomic Township. Okay. So I asked that, so why is it that you have removed the headrest? They told me that because the road is poorly lit. When I say poorly lit, that there's not much lighting and illumination on the road, especially at night. When you are driving and the headrest is there, people who would like to stop you to join the vehicle think that there's somebody sitting there because of the shadow that is cast. So they don't stop you and you drive past, only to remember that just after driving past the passenger, you realize that the passenger was trying to stop you. Now, in that particular scenario, I learned that because the road is poorly lit, that is why he's removing the headrest from the car so that he could actually be able, he removes the one that's on the passenger side of by the driver so that people could see through the car. Then sometimes they also remove their own so that you can see through the car easily. So that was one reason. But then I asked myself that, so if I go to another place like maybe East Legon or a more developed town in environment in Accra here, where the street lights are all working, would a taxi driver working in that area also give me that same answer? So I went to different locality and I asked why the taxi drivers there also, because I could see the phenomenon there, also remove the headrest. And then the person told me that he applies between the Trinity Junction. There's a junction in Accra here where you have got the Trinity College. So it's a kind of a seminary and there's a road in front there. So he drives on that particular road. And he was mentioning to me that, you see, sometimes when people board the taxi, they tie their necks to the headrest and seize the taxi from them. So it looked like they were kind of peddlers, thieves, and armed robbers on the road sometimes at night. And he also said it happens at daytime because that road used to be a very quiet road. So somebody stops you with the mind of boarding the taxi, sits at the back, and whilst you are driving, he will just tie your neck to the headrest and collect the taxi keys from you and throw you out of the taxi. So out of safety, he removed all the headrests so that he could be safe. That's very interesting. So I asked him that, so what have you done about it? He said they have reported to the police and now the police have been having roadblocks there in the evening so that kind of thing is stopped. Then I asked that, so if I go to another area and so all of this, I'm changing the context. I go to another context and I realize that headrests are being removed. What could happen? What could be the reason? So I actually went to another suburb in Accra called Boateng, where people sell spare parts. And I went there and I realized that people were they were actually mechanics who remove headrests for these taxi drivers, and they fix new ones there. So I asked them, why did they remove the headrests? And some of them started telling me the issue that we see sometimes when the cars they import into the country, they have got baby lock in it, and the baby lock systems sometimes when they sit in a taxi. The taxis are being driven in localities, the baby lock systems are engaged. So, and some of the locking system and mechanisms of the cars are in poor condition because they are used cars. So, and some of the cars too don't have on the window, they don't have a very good power, they don't have power windows. So you have to use a roller. So when they sit in the car, they realize that some of the customers are struggling to either open the car, the door when they are getting down, or they are trying to roll down the glass and they need a roller. So they are not using a power window, so which is automatic. You need to use a roller, and they don't know how to use a roller. So the taxi driver has to stretch his arm across and help. To be able to stretch your arm across and get a good space, you need to remove the headrest so that when your car that is not is not up to standard in terms of the mechanisms of the internal locking system of the roller, you can be able to reach the roller or reach the locker and then tell the person that I'll open the door for you. So and I realized this is very, very interesting. So now in 3 different localities, I'm getting 3 different answers. Then lastly, one other locality that I went to around Newtown area also told me that the reason why they removed the headrest is that this was also had to do with robbery. They realized that there had been situations in which you are driving on a particular route, and then you realize that a person boards a car, an innocent person boards the car, you get another route, another person boards the car, you get another route, another person boards the car. Now what tends to happen is that the person who had boarded the car maybe the second time was a person who is the most innocent among all. The 2 of them who may be sitting by the sides of the car, or even 2 people may be sitting behind. One person is intending to steal. The other person is an innocent passenger. So the person intending to steal will usually tell you that, oh, please look, take something from you, and will try to draw away the attention of the passenger to look through the window. So while the passenger is looking through the window at something, they will pick maybe a mobile phone or pick something from the person's handbag. This was done to ladies a lot. So, and then the person will get down, the person who had done the robbery will get down at the next station. So at the next store, as soon as he does it, he will get down. Only for the person who has been robbed, when he gets to the destination, his or her destination, he will only realize that, but I want to make payment and I can't find my wallet, or something has been taken from my bag, my phone. Then he would think that the taxi driver and then the person who boarded and got down are in cohorts in trying to rob him. And that could be they'll draw alarm to it, and the taxi driver can be lynched or can find himself in trouble. So we saw issues with robbery, we saw issues with poorly lit environments, and we also saw issues with the condition of the car. Now, if I wanted to bring an intervention to address this issue, which of them am I going to do? But what is very interesting is that qualitative research has helped me to explore all the differences that could exist and meanings that could exist within these issues. And as a researcher, I had to be aware of my own biases and experiences before I could carry out the research very well. I didn't use my experiences to influence the people. I listened to them. I listened to them, and they shared the different experiences they have, the different understandings that they have concerning the issue. Okay, key features of qualitative research. So I think now you have a better understanding of how qualitative research works. I just want you to take your time and just take this in, and then as we continue. If you have any questions so far, please let me have them before I go to the next section. Yes, Felix and Co, if you have any question.
So, Prof, in doing this was the stages of you collecting your data through your qualitative.
Yes, because I'm a qualitative researcher, I appreciated that the context could actually influence the understanding. That is why, because I wanted to have a better understanding of the issue, after talking to the first taxi driver, I went on to a different person. I could have just concluded based on the first issue when I interviewed taxi drivers at Atomic Junction. That would have given me a narrow perspective of the issue, not appreciating that the context and the people who work in the context have a different interaction. So their meanings about the issue may be different. In this environment, in this state of Ghana, that if I go around now asking students questions about Qualitative and your experiences with teaching, even when we take the same student, course by course, students will tell me that the experiences are different. Some students will tell me that the course that you're having now, oh, we go online with the lecturer, we like this, we don't like that. Another student will tell me that the lecturer has never come online, he sent the slides to us, he sent something to us, we don't even know who the lecturer is, the student will be complaining. We go to another student, he also tell you that how I wish I had back my face-to-face lectures, because I can't learn from home. I can't be able to join from home, and I'm really struggling. So all students are having different experiences, and the experiences may not be unique, will not be the same, they may be different. So we need to appreciate that the interactions that the students are having shape the understanding and meanings that they have about the issue.
Thank you.
Hello, sir.
Yes, please.
So please, can we say that for a qualitative research, one has to have some sort of a conceptual framework and now go to the field to test?
Oh, it depends on what you are doing. All research is good to have a conceptual framework or some kind of understanding of how you're going to study the phenomenon. But sometimes students in qualitative research, sometimes students, before they even formulate their theory, they would like to test the data. So they do a pilot interaction with the field of study so they can know, oh, what potential issues may be interesting to study. I'm interested in students and their experiences in college. So after doing some interactions, I realized that if I should look at a framework that is more about maybe adoption of the technology and has the framework is not only technology factors, but introduces other dimensions like social issues, contextual issues, it will be better than going with a framework that will be just on technology issues. Sometimes students do that. But what you are saying is true. Any research that you're carrying out, you should have some framework in mind, and that will guide you on the questions that you ask. But a qualitative researcher doesn't go just with the framework. He has an understanding that sometimes society itself can even shape the framework you are studying. As you are answering questions in your framework, you should have open questions so that you can get other outlier information that may not have been captured in your pre-conceptualization about what is happening in the reality. Qualitative research don't stick themselves to reality is constructed only in an objective manner. Quantitative researchers think that the world is objective, so it should be instrumentally studied. So if you look at quantitative questionnaire, they have questions that are fixed choice. To which of these do you agree with? To what extent do you agree with this issue? Very, very straight, a totally structured questionnaire. You don't have any flexibility. Qualitative researcher tells you, tell me what you are going through. You have an open question. Before you even go into the narrow down on some of the factors that he wants to study. If you have got 3 factors on your qualitative questionnaire, and one is about context, one is about, let's say, people issues, another is about maybe technology issues, you may not even ask them directly in that fashion. You may use a semi-structured approach where you allow the person to tell me what you have been experiencing, what factors have been influencing your views about this issue. The person talks, and as you are talking, he's talking, you realize, oh, there are technology issues, there are social issues, there are these issues. Then if you don't hear something you are looking for, you can ask specifically, do you think the data that was given to you by Vodafone, has it been good? Because he didn't mention it to me. I said, oh, in fact, that's what I forgot. I have to talk about it. And this and this and this and this, and then you say all those kind of stuff. Because the student who is your interviewing has gone through so many things. So whatever comes into his mind as being important is what you share at that point in time. So you, the researcher, should be flexible to be able to take in the diversity of experiences that they have. So if you look at the first point, all researchers and all our participants come with viewpoints which are different and are subjective to several perspectives and social backgrounds related to them. So if I narrow my view in my questions, I may end up having a very narrow perspective of my answer. Do you understand me?
Yes, sir. Yes, I get it.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So any other question?
So assuming you were interviewing the passengers instead of the drivers, that would have given us different phenomena, correct?
Yes, please. Yes, you are right. The kind of people that you interview to can shape the study.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So can we? Any other question? The ladies are not asking any questions. Okay.
Hello, Doc, Prof. My question is, like this phenomenon you're talking about, the taxi driver phenomenon, for instance.
Yes, please.
Yes, they gave different answers.
Yes, please.
So are you going to conclude based on these answers you have received from them, or you are going to base your conclusion on your own judgment from their responses?
You are studying a phenomenon, so you conclude based on their responses. And I didn't tell you my research question.
Yeah.
I just told you what was on my questionnaire, but my research question could be much more broader than that issue. Do you understand me? If my objective as a government, as a public admin student, is supposed to solve this issue about drivers removing their headrest, I may end up with policies and recommendations to the MP and then Ghana Highway Authority and the police. Do you realize? But if my study is about education and how it affects certain micro trading jobs or micro trading activities, I'm going to tell you how education is affecting drivers in Ghana, and my view will be different. If my study was much more about healthcare and fatigue and how it happens in driving, the impact of driving the state of a car on the health of a driver, my conclusions will be different. So we always have to realize that in carrying out our study, as much as you are taking data from the field, what is your research purpose? What is your research objective? Don't just look at the questionnaire questions, but where is the logic going to? Remember the other time we were talking about all theories have got logic. Where are you? What are you trying to, phenomenon are you trying to study and try to unravel on earth? Don't just look at the questions that you have got on your questionnaire. The questions you have got on your questionnaire come together to form a whole, a meaningful whole. So don't pick one aspect of it and have a biased view. If I was going to advise the MP and I just look at the first question, the first set of taxi drivers, I would have just gone and said, tell the MP that go to Hatu and put light everywhere, put road lights everywhere. But that one will still not solve the problem where you have got armed robbery. I hope you understand. It can reduce it, but it might not solve the problem. It might not solve the problem with the cars, the age of the cars that we have been bringing to Ghana. Remember, there's a ban over on used cars that are past some age. But sometimes some of them still get into the country. Salvage cars, they break, and most of the salvage cars, the doors are the ones which have got a problem. You realize they hit on the side or people don't like front impact cars, they like side impact, because they can just change the doors. And when they change the doors, you realize what happens. Yeah, you know, when they change the door of the cars, you realize that sometimes you have to buy a new door. But some people don't buy a new door. They try to just straighten the old door, and some part of the door doesn't work anymore. So please, let's get a better understanding. Why you're laughing? Let's get a better understanding of what you are trying to say. Okay, so qualitative researchers always have to take into consideration the perspective of the participants they are trying to interview or interact in the research. They come from different social backgrounds and different views. Okay, now let's take this example. Somebody is doing a study on gender and micro enterprise. Please, if I'm going too fast, you can just tell that I should slow down and explain an issue again.
Okay.
Do you own this enterprise? That's the question that the person was asking. Now that's a very, very broad understanding. What do you mean by ownership? Is ownership about who makes the key managerial decisions concerning the enterprise? Is ownership about somebody, the inheritance perspective, or who received it as a gift, or the partnership? Because all these are forms of ownership. There are people who own because of the view of ownership is about the key decisions they make. There is a shop you may go to Kumasi or even some parts of Wager, and you may see a shop there. The shop attendant you see there makes all the key managerial decisions, but the thing is owned by a 3-year-old child. The parents have willed for the 3-year-old child or a 10-year-old child. He is the owner in terms of inheritance, but the decisions are currently being made by the person who is sitting there. Somebody too owns it because by virtue of the fact that he got it as a gift or through marriage. And that's why they say, oh, this one is owned by my wife, but I'm managing it for my wife. So you have to understand that if your question about ownership is related to discussing how much you get from, how much you make, where do you buy your produce from, then in that sense, you are looking for the manager. But if you are looking for the person who, when you look at a legal document and you want to check that who is the owner, so that the thing can be, before the thing is sold, or it is purchased, or it is before the particular enterprise is closed down. That person has to be taken into consideration. Then you may be thinking about who on the legal form owns the particular document, the particular enterprise. So ownership has several meanings. Ownership has several meanings. Ownership has several meanings, and we need to appreciate those fluid meanings of ownership. Okay. Now, the researcher too has to understand that he comes to the research activity with some relative subjectivity, and the fact that he himself, in studying the issue, can also change the way the issue is being studied. You can go to a market and you are doing a study, and you wear a suit, wear a tie, and then as soon as you start asking the questions, there's a perception that the person who is going to answer has created about you, and that can affect the person's answers to you. So you, the researcher, have to be aware of your own biases and orientations that you bring to the study. You are doing a study on politics, and you go to a community to interview people. Then you wear a political party's colors and then shirt and then cap. What is it? At the end of the day, by the time you even enter the environment, if you don't take care and you find yourself in an opposition constituency, you may be lynched and you may be beaten up. Nobody may mind you. So you, the researcher, you should understand how your biases can influence the methods and the analysis you have. Supposing you want to interview an iterant market person, that's those hawkers who carry some produce to sell in smaller quantities in a pan on their head. Then you go to a market and tell them, I want to do an interview with them. Then you carry them to a hotel to go and do the interview. Because the viewpoints will change because you have changed the natural settings in which the study is taking place. So please appreciate that you, the researcher, should be reflective of the biases that you bring to the research and how you carry out yourself in the research process. Otherwise, your experiences and your biases can actually influence the study. Especially when you want to buy something at Makola and you are in suit. they will change the price. Yeah, right. Anyway, so when we began the very first day I met with you, I mentioned that when carrying out research, we should know that our activities are often iterative. That whenever we make a choice, we should go back and realize that that choice can affect other dimensions of the research, like selecting the topic, focusing the question, designing the study, and collecting the data. So now that we are discussing collection of the data, we should also realize that the collection of the data activity can influence the other dimensions of the research. It can even affect your design. You may go to a field and realize that the viewpoints you are obtaining is just narrow to the people and their experiences. And if you are not very careful to appreciate that part, that the context is what is generating these answers, you jump with the conclusions and say that, yeah, I found the answer for this issue, but you just got a narrow perspective of the issue. So the key features in qualitative research, according to Patton and especially Patton has a number of them, which I've outlined in the book, about 12 of them. I think I can discuss about 4 of them. But when you go and you're reading the chapters, chapter 6, and you are doing the related assignment to it, which will come later in the day, you see that there are other dimensions of this. The first one is that every qualitative research should take place as a naturalistic inquiry. Naturalistic inquiry means that we should try to do the study in the natural settings in which it takes place. That is one. Or we should try to study the real situations naturally. We don't try to manipulate or control the situation. Don't try to manipulate or control the situation. For example, I remember I was doing a study on a factory, and not a beverage, alcoholic beverage factory. That in fact they sell both non-alcoholic and alcoholic. And I went into the shop, to do the study. I did my interviews with the operation manager, with the manager, and then the IT manager. And I needed to go to the manufacturing section. And I needed to spend 2 weeks with them and be observing. 2 weeks, not asking major questions, but observing and writing notes. And then also the next day, after I observed, and I interact with the key officers to explain what I observed to them. And then they will give me feedback on my observation. Now, when you enter the factory and you're observing, and you carry a pen and paper, and that you are going to observe, if you're not very careful, the shop floor workers, thinking that you are there, or the factory workers thinking that you are having a piece of paper, consider that you are there to do an assessment, or which will lead to promotion or extra pay. So they may, somebody who was carrying 2 boxes want to carry 3 boxes now to impress you. So you have manipulated the, the environment, and you are changing the conditions that occur. So I realized that all I had to do was to blend in, get a suit like a factory overall, get my protective gear on, and just forget our pen on paper and observe. And after observing about an hour, go back and go and write what I was, then go back again. Because if you don't take care, you just carry a pen and paper and you are pointing at things and writing, and even maybe trying to take a camera to take pictures. All these things will manipulate the environment. Your objective is not to try to change the environment you are studying. You are trying to do the study in a natural setting. So you have to allow it to occur and progress naturally. Those of you who have to go to markets, those of you who have to go to a children's school and observe students, you need to know that in observation, try to do, sometimes there's what we call direct observation or participant observation. That one I'll teach you later. That one you can be part of the study, part of what is happening there, but you need to let the students know that you are a researcher and you are participating in the activity. Then there's non-participant observation. You are there, they know you are there, but you are not participating, you are just observing. So they are told to do their natural activities, and then you can observe. And you also have got naturalistic observation, which is also an observation that you do without manipulating the findings or manipulating the setting. You remember, those of you who know about football, many football coaches do scouting. Scouting means that you go to a place, watch a football match, and see the player that you want to buy or play pitches, play a game in its natural settings, and watch him, even start training, watch him from afar, so they can have an understanding of how he plays. Now, what you are trying to do is to try to study the football player or the athlete in the natural setting. So we call that naturalistic observation. We'll learn about the observations later. So we are saying that don't manipulate the setting. And qualitative research is also open to adaptive inquiry, or is open to adapting inquiry such as in understanding or deepening your viewpoints about what you are trying to study. So what do we mean by adapting inquiry? No qualitative researcher is advised to have a very rigid questionnaire or rigid research design. Allow the methods that you apply to emerge as you are observing or as you are interacting with the phenomenon. You have designed a questionnaire. Some of the questions on the questionnaire will go to a person A. Another set of the questions go to B. Some of the questions will be answered by just observing. Others will also be answered by reading documents. So when you are involved in the study and you are asking questions with doing interview, for example, you should make sure that as you are interviewing and you are picking cues, you should have open questions that allow you to delve deeper into the issue, or even ask other questions that have a better picture of that, what you have. Don't say that because you had only 3 questions, after asking the 3 questions, you are finished. No. You are observing, you are taking notes of issues, and as they come up, you can go deeper, ask more questions, ask other questions which are tangential, so that you can have a better understanding. I remember when I went to the beverage company, they mentioned some of their strategies that they used to have when they began the company. And they used to tell me that when they began the company, they used to go to a particular locality in Accra to go and sell to people. But when they go to that locality, they realized that when you go during the daytime, you meet only the workers, because the owners of the bars and the shops, the drinking spots and the restaurants were middle class, blue collar workers who were actually working in town. And what they do is that they work in town. Some of them are public servants. They work in the ministries during the daytime. So in the evening, they come down there to their shops and come and do accounts. So if you want to sell a new drink to them, you come in the evening, but you distribute in the afternoon or the daytime. So during the daytime, you go and meet a shop attendant or somebody who is just selling within the shop as a shopping attendant. Then if you want to sell something to them, pitch a product to the person will not buy. He'll tell you that come in the evening and meet my boss, or come in the evening and meet my manager. So when you come in the evening, you can meet the owner or the manager of them who is working in maybe the ministries or working in a private sector company in the daytime. So he's not there at the drinking spot or at the restaurant, this local restaurant in the daytime. So you come in the evening and then you show the drink to them, give them some sample. You may even get some of the people who come to buy produce there to sample it. If they sample and they like it, then they sign a contract with you and you come and pay, you supply in the daytime. So what I then did was that I said that means if I want to collect my data, the daytime I can just come and observe those who are coming to supply. But in the evening, I have to come back and sit down with the owner of the shop or the owner of the drinking spot or the restaurant to be able to interact with them and gain an understanding of what it takes to be able to sell this product and how they get their produce and negotiate on pricing. Because that's what I was trying to study. So this has even influenced my data collection. If my data collection was tied to daytime, go there in the daytime, ask the questions in the daytime, then I'm going to have a problem. As soon as my respondent tells me that I have to meet him in the evening, it means that it's not part of my research design, so I won't do it. A researcher who is qualitative should be emergent with his flexible, with which his or her research design. Whatever design you have set up to use for your research work. When we say research design, we are referring to how you are going to collect the data, what data you are going to collect, and then how you are going to analyze the data. What I'm trying to emphasize here is that as you're interacting with the subjects, listen to them and understand that some of the data may be obtained from a different perspective or a different time. Okay. Then qualitative researchers also draw on different types of different forms of data. One is observation, another is interviews, another is audiovisual material, and other is the documents and text. Audiovisual is quite recent. You know that now you have got Facebook and all these platforms that have audio information and video information. And I'm going to, in this audio information, when you go there, it affects the way you collect your data. So I just want you to know that audio information and then video information. Now, if you go to certain websites, you can download those data from those websites or study. You can even study what we call some of the sentiments and some of the interaction that's happening on pages. People are doing that now. And then you can use that one in your long essay or your thesis that you are carrying out. Then you also got documents. Documents can be private or public, and we'll discuss those ones later. But the qualitative researcher also has to have context sensitivity. The context you are trying to do the study in has a history. That context is also social, and that context is temporal. Let's take it one by one. Every context is social because the context itself have human beings in it who constantly interact with the context. So you are going to observe the social phenomenon being modified or being developed or constructed and reconstructed by the social events that take place. You go to a shop or you go to a company. The hierarchy in the company even affects the way the questions are being done. Let me just use this as an example. This same beverage company I want to interview them. Will you believe that the very first time I said I was going to do the study, I sent my letter via email. My supervisor signed it from Manchester University. So we emailed it before I got to Ghana. When I got to Ghana, the date of the interview and everything, they were sitting in their boardroom waiting for me to do the interview. When I got there, they told me that we thought we were going to do the interview by Skype. So the board manager and then the director and some of the key persons are all in the boardroom waiting for the details that they were going to call you so that you send the details to them and then they log on and talk to University of Manchester. So they thought that the University of Manchester lecturers are sitting on one side and they are going to use either that time to Skype to do a video call and then interact with them. I said, no, I was going to show up in person and need an interview. As soon as I said I was showing up in person, the social discourse, the social environment changed. Everybody scattered, went to the office. Okay, go and talk to the operations manager. When you finish the operations manager, you need more information. And you can also talk to the marketing manager. The head of the company told me that the operations manager can answer all my questions. I don't need to interview him anymore. And he left. This is a real thing I'm telling you. He left. But if I had done the video call, everybody would have sat down. It would have been they thought it was going to be a point of opportunity of pitching the company, talking about interesting things that they are doing, and let people in Ghana know that University of Manchester is really studying them, and they have become a case study for University of Manchester. But when I showed up in person as an individual, the same University of Manchester coming as an individual, no white person with me, no person with me, it became a different type of data collection. So the environment that you are doing the study in is social. And you have to understand some of the social cues that take place when you're going to carry out the study. However, you are laughing at me. Then it's also historical. Things happen because of other things that have happened in the past. For example, one company that I went to do my interview in, when I got there and I was going to do my interview, very why you're here, thank you very much. When I was going to do my interview, I went in, they told me that I should go up and sit down. After about 30 minutes, they called me to come in. As soon as I entered the head that the manager I was talking to got up and opened the window of his, opened the curtain, sorry, and looked down. You know, most of the cars, the offices that have a high-rise building, when they draw their curtain, the office looks down to the car park. So the office looked down to the car park, and he looked down and told me that, are you the one who bought the Ford F-150? And I said, yeah, I bought the Ford F-150. He said, oh, okay, that's interesting. Good. Then he smiled, then he put his chair, he said, oh, let's talk now. And I said, what is happening? So when we finished the interview and everything, apparently when we drove in, the people looked at the guy, he was in some interviews and some other discussion, and you look at the car that I brought. And that was why I moved from 30 minutes. I was able to see him within 30 minutes. I would have sat there till about 2 hours if I bought a different car. But the F-150 broke down. We're coming from, those of you who know, climbing up from, let me just give the, those who know this place very well, the standard started at Abraka. Coming down, you see, you climb up and you descend down. The car broke down there and we pushed the car. Then we push it down, we push the car, and then, you know, F-150 can't push it. It's a very heavy car. And I remember when I was pushing it, when we finished pushing it, we got, and the car started. By the time I needed to pay the boys, and I had only pounds on me. So when I opened my pocket to pay for it, I thought I had 20 Ghana cedis or something like that. And I gave out 20 pounds instead of the 20 pounds note. Looked like one of the CD notes. I can't remember which of the CD notes. So whatever I was giving, and I was giving the people 20 pounds. By the time I realized I was giving almost about 60 pounds to the people without knowing what I was doing. So, and I already had lost money. And the issue was the fact that there was something wrong with the engine. And after you drive, you get overheating and those kind of issues. But this same car, we are pushing it, and when we go to the car park, we didn't enter fully. We just park at some place so that you know that you have an angle. If you are going and just put the car on free, you can get the car engine will spark and go. So the angle that I put in, by God's grace, was the angle that the guy, when he looked down, he saw my car. And that gave me access. I'm just trying to let you understand that in qualitative research, one of the things that you hear, these things are historical. So when I asked the people, they told me that, oh, this man is into cars. So it's like, so this thing about cars and this, what is giving me access to the guy to even talk to you? Say, oh yeah, that's it. So the situations in the office are historical, and you may not even know what is even happening. And sometimes somebody may not be responding to you because of. Philip, you said, what was that? This is 2006. So, well, I said, it's historical, and the history also shapes what you are doing. The last thing is that the context you are trying to study is also temporal. Temporal meaning that certain things can happen now that may not be the same as what will happen if you come tomorrow. For example, in our current study that we saw, remember we mentioned that the gentleman went there during springtime. If he comes there during summertime, it will be different. For example, I remember that when I was doing my PhD in 2006, April, when I came down to come and collect data for my pilot study. Pilot study is a preliminary study that you do to test your questionnaire and to check whether people understand the phenomenon even exists, and to check whether people can answer the questions and which aspect of the phenomenon will be best for you to study. Even though you have your theory state defined, you need to do a pilot to understand how people see the phenomenon. Because if you're not very careful, the way you see it in the literature may be more mature than what you see in Ghana. That's something I want to tell you. Ghanaians may not have the same understanding as you are seeing in the literature. So you need to check before you go out with the full study. So after doing my pilot study, I chose a number of companies, including FanMail, to do my study. So I came back in October 2006, around the 19th of October, to carry out my full study. When I showed up, FanMail told me that the next year was going to be Ghana at 50. So they were preparing for Ghana at 50 as far as in October. and they had a far heavy plan. They were one of the key companies that were supposed to do a number of activities during the Ghana at 50. So if I can go and come back, you see, because what they're telling me now, the current setting I'm coming to study, they will not have time for me. That is one. Number two, they have changed production to be able to make sure they can produce more towards Ghana at 50. And that has changed. They're even introducing some new products. That has changed what I want to study. Hence, the environment has become tailored for Ghana at 50. When I come back after March 6 next year, the conditions will change, and I will end up coming to learn something different if I come in the next year, which was very, very interesting to me. But I look at my time, and I realized that if I come the next year to affect the PhD, the time I'll be able to finish my PhD. So I had to drop fan milk out of the study and choose a new company. So the study, what I'm trying to emphasize is that the environment you are doing the study on is also has a temporal context. It can change, and today it's looking like what you want to study. Tomorrow it can also change. If you are not sensitive about the context and you are just carrying out the study, I want to do the study, all these things can influence what you are doing. Okay. Now, remember I was trying to push and explain the different dimensions, qualitative and quantitative. So qualitative researchers try to explore a phenomenon and describe it, whilst quantitative try to confirm hypotheses or relationships in their phenomena. So usually a quantitative person will hypothesize a relationship and go and test it. Because he's hypothesizing relationship, we say that he's seeing the world in an objective perspective. And that objective perspective means that he needs to use rigid instruments to collect data. And the rigid instruments are, the questionnaires are well-defined, structured observation. They want to look at something, that is what they want to look into, and then that's all that they are collecting, all the data they are collecting. A quantitative person does not need to be in the environment to study the environment, because he says that if I go there, I don't go there, the environment will not change. So he can send his questionnaire, somebody can collect the data for him, and then you go and analyze it. Qualitative don't think that way. Qualitative says that when I'm in the environment, I may observe things that may even shape my understanding of the phenomenon. So why do I have to let somebody collect my data for me? Or even if somebody is collecting my data for me, I want the person to capture the experience, the time, what is happening there. What was the person wearing when he was even being interviewed? What was the office environment like? All of these things can influence a person as he's even being interviewed or he's sharing information with you. Qualitative researchers try to describe variation, describe and explain relationships, describe individual experiences, and describe group norms. Usually they like open-ended or semi-open-ended questions or semi-structured questions, or questionnaires. Whilst quantitative is close-ended, to predict causal relationship, to quantify variation, and to describe characteristics of a population. In qualitative research, most of the data will be textual. Even if it's video or audio, we'll convert it into text. The quantitative research will be numerical. It doesn't mean that a qualitative researcher will not like statistics about the company. That can have an understanding of, for example, if the company was making $200,000 a year one, and then $150,000 year two, and then $100,000 year three, it tells you that the company is on a decline. That can inform your study and can let you ask what is happening. Why are you going down? Because you are looking at the quantitative data. So qualitative can appreciate some of the quantitative data that can help describe the phenomenon. But qualitative will appreciate some of the quantitative data that will help you describe the phenomenon. But quantitative wants purely quantitative data to be able to understand the phenomenon or predict it or define it or even quantify it. Now, because of that, quantitative researchers always think that there can be a distance between the researcher and then the subject. So he doesn't need to be there to actually stick to administer his questionnaire. Most of you have answered quantitative questionnaires without even knowing who is the researcher behind it. Qualitative researcher is different. Qualitative researcher is aware of his own biases and his interaction with the content. So he comes there, he wants that interaction to be there so that he can observe, collect rich information about what is happening in the natural settings of the content of the phenomenon so that he can be able to describe, explain the phenomenon within its context. Types of qualitative research. There is phenomenology, ethnography, case study, and grounded theory. We'll take each of them one after the other. So in phenomenology, one of the things that we do in phenomenology is that we want to describe experiences, people's individual experiences with a phenomenon. So we have got what we call the humanistic phenomenology, which interprets text to explore a lived experience. So somebody has lived as an experience and you want to study the thing, you study the person. Now, humanistic means that you are actually also trying to interpret the text about that phenomenon. So somebody has written a story about an issue, especially with something like biographies. Things like biographies and autobiographies fall under phenomenology, the phenomenon of a lived experience. That's what you're trying to study. Okay, so sometimes some of them are captured in text. So in text format, those who like to study the text of a phenomenon are what are called humanistic researchers. They try to study texts like blogs, tweets, documented accounts of an experience. So somebody will ask a question, what are the doctoral student supervision experience as interpreted through their blogs, chats, and tweets? Yesterday, for 2 days ago, for example, I'm part of, I've joined you on WhatsApp. And I realized that the weekend, the regular MBA students were trying to come up with, a demonstration or a setup concerning the fact that they want to go on a campaign that the university should refund part of their money. And they have seen such a thing in their in the UK happening, and they want to also do the same. So they discuss their strategy and everything whilst on the platform, what they will do, where they will send the information to. And I was just on the platform, just observe. I said, this is a very interesting research piece. And all the students were just talking, were arguing and saying that they support the issue, they don't support the issue. They even designed the flyer and they put the flyer on the platform for people to comment. And I was just behind there watching because this is a classroom environment and I'm supposed to be part of the class environment. But now they have turned the class environment into a political environment and they're having their discussion, very serious discussions. And all of them were coming in tweets and text messages in WhatsApp, all kinds of things about what they will do, what they will say. But the next morning, I realized that there was a news article in Ghana Web with a position saying that 2 students in University of Ghana Business School have come up with a campaign that they are going to do this. And I was just watching. I said that this is the same thing that I saw the process. I lived the experience of how this thing came about. Somebody's laughing. I lived the experience of how this came about. So I can do a study on it. What are doctorals? What are master students' experiences towards COVID-19? I actually lived it as interpreted through their blogs, tweets, and chats. Interesting. So please be very careful what you say in groups that you belong to. Because you could see the names, the phone numbers, everybody was saying something, was commenting on something, and the evidence is there. Anyway, then we also have transcendental phenomenology. Transcendental phenomenology describes the meaning or one or several individuals have, concerning the meanings one or several individuals have had or lived of a concept or a phenomenon. In this particular one, you want to describe the essence or the essential elements of their experience. For example, what is the experience of being supervised in a doctoral program at Lincoln University? So that one has to do, yeah, this participant, this is non-participant observation. Okay, they knew I was there, but I didn't participate. They knew I was there, but I didn't participate anyway. So so in this scenario, you are not studying text, you are studying the account the people have gone through. So transcendental phenomenology, you are studying the account people have gone through. They are sharing that account with you. Then you also have ethnography. Ethnography is a quantitative research method which involves the description of people and the nature of the phenomenon. But this one comes from a prolonged or an in-depth collection of data to be able to explore the cultural characteristics of a group and then the phenomenon that the thing takes place in. So if you are trying to study that phenomenon, the phenomenon is explained within the culture in which it takes place. That's what makes it ethnography. Ethnography means that you are actually trying to get a graphical picture of how the culture influences the phenomenon that you are studying. Because you are talking about culture, you need a longer period of or an in-depth or a concentrated time to be able to capture what is happening concerning the phenomenon as viewed from the cultural lens. So an ethnographic description includes the cultural characteristics of the people who are experiencing the phenomenon and their cultural scenes. The researchers observe and interact with the study's participants in the real life environment. But when they are giving the account, they give the account based on the cultural interaction that they have. So understanding for example, understanding the evolving nature of cybercrime and criminality in slum communities in Accra. In this scenario, you may have to go and live in that slum community, study their culture, and see how the culture shapes the people and the occurrence of cybercrime and criminality in that particular community. Then you have case study. Case study is a study of a bounded system. Now that's what we'll do into detail, hopefully next week. Case study is a study of a bounded system. A bounded system means that you're actually trying here to study a system that has a defined boundary. It can be a person, a group, or activity or process. The bounded system represents an instance of a real occurrence in the real world. So let me just give an example. Somebody wants to study, let's say, the response of the experiences of banking consumers or consumers of a bank towards, let's say, COVID-19, or towards, let's say, the banking reforms. Now, your objective here to study banking consumers, but you have to, the banking consumers or the consumers of bank, they are quite diverse, because you have about 30-something commercial banks, and how many of them are you going to study? So if you select that you are studying 2 banks, let's say Bank of Africa, and they say another bank being, let's say, Ghana Commercial Bank, you have selected banks, two banks, and those banks you have selected are a real world instance of a real bank. Bank of Africa can be seen as a bank that may be an international bank, in the sense that it's a foreign bank operating in Ghana, because it's now been bought and it's owned by, I think it's domiciled in Nigeria, having branches across Africa. Ghana Commercial Bank, on the other hand, is a national bank. So if you want a real world instance of a national bank, Ghana Commercial Bank. If you want a real world instance of a foreign bank in Ghana, it will be Bank of Africa. So in this scenario, you are studying a real world event, activity, process, institution. And that one will give you an understanding of what is happening with the banking sector. So in a case study, you choose a case, and that case has to be defined either by boundary, event, or activity. And for example, somebody is trying to do a study on people who support a particular football team. So that particular is an instance of an activity, and that activity defines the boundary of the particular study you are doing. So all supporters of Arsenal, all supporters of, let's say, Kotoko, or all supporters of, let's say, Real Madrid, that's where your study is going to be. The case study therefore represents an intensive analysis of that bounded system. If you are studying Real Madrid fans, you are studying only Real Madrid fans. The bounded system becomes the unit of analysis. So all the questions that you ask has to be tied around that particular bounded system, or the real world instance you're trying to study. So when qualitative researchers do case study, what they are trying to say is that they can take a real world instance of the phenomenon and study it. Instead of trying to study all the multiple instances, they'll take one real world instance that has characteristics like a common occurrence of phenomenon and study it. If I want to study the universities in Ghana, I don't need to go and study or go to every university and study it. I can pick one university which is public, and I can pick one university which is private. I can pick one university which is private owned by a religious institution, and I can pick one which is owned by a business person or a private agency and owned by an entrepreneur. And then after that, try to have a big picture of what it is to do a study, what it is concerning the phenomenon within a university context. I remember one of my students was doing a study of mobile banking in Ghana. And what he did is mobile learning in Ghana. So he took 2 public universities and 2 private universities. So 2 public universities and 2 private universities. So, and one in the private university took one which is owned by an entrepreneur and one which is owned by a religious institution. And the public institution, he took 2 of them, which were straightforward. One in Accra and one in Kumasi. So by the time he did the study, he got a good picture of all the the mobile learning in 4 Ghanaian universities. So you can see that mobile learning in Ghana, a case study of 4 Ghanaian institutions or public and private academic institutions in Ghana. So a case study can be done on a bounded system. And that's what you should know. Philip, I didn't mention Manchester United. Sorry. Because Ronaldo is no longer there, that's why I didn't mention it. Now, when there's a person that do a case study is done when these 3 questions are what you want to do. One, depending on the type of question you want to answer. Case studies are very good for studies that are about how and why, because you are going to describe a phenomenon, explain a phenomenon. So why and how questions are very good. It doesn't mean that case studies cannot do what. It can also do what. But I'm trying to say that when you have how and why, it helps quite a lot if you are doing case study because of the fact that you are trying to describe a phenomenon. Now, case studies are good when you are studying contemporary events as opposed to historical events. So the degree is more on contemporary issues. It doesn't mean that case study cannot do historical issues, but contemporary events that you, the researcher, has not much control about. So the only way you can uncover it is to get into the case and ask questions about it. That's what you are trying to say. The only way you can uncover that particular, you see, when you talk about historical, what happens is that sometimes somebody has documented the story already for you. But with the contemporary events, nobody has documented it for you. There's not much information out there. You don't have control over it. You need to go through a case study and use the appropriate methods to learn about it so that you can write the case about it. So a case study is very good for a types of study that you are trying to describe or explore or describe or understand a contemporary phenomenon in which you don't have much control about, or you don't even know how it occurs or why it's occurring. So you want to try to describe and explain what is happening in that particular phenomenon. Okay. Now, case study tend to also matter when somebody is engaging in a type of study that requires a spotlight evaluation or a microscopic evaluation of selected social processes. You have to go into a social process and tell us how it's occurring. For example, somebody studying ride-sharing services in like Tango and Uber. He wants to do a case on it. Or somebody who's doing poverty and livelihoods in the community. You want to do a case study on it. I'm not saying that you cannot do quantitative on it, but this one, you want to describe a social event that is taking place within a particular activity or a particular phenomenon. So in that scenario, you need a case study to do that microscopic evaluation or description of what is happening. When we say microscopic evaluation, you are describing to the latter, to the very detail of how something occurred. Now, you do that within the real life context in order to provide a strong test of prevailing explanations or ideas and to refine knowledge. Meaning, by the time you finish doing a case study, you would have been able to help us test some of our concepts that we have, the initial theoretical proposition we had concerning a phenomenon, and then we can redefine it and make it better. Okay, so look at a case, an example of a case. I'm just giving highlights here. We'll do detailed study on a case study later on. So an example of a case. 1, Auntie Akosia is a tomato retail trader. She has junior high school level education and has been working as a tomato retailer since 2008. AA works with Jane, who serves as an intermediary between her and the farmers in the villages. Jane buys the tomatoes at wholesale prices from farmers and retails them at the market. Prior to now, all the fair description is giving you a background. Usually, good case studies always have a case background that can help you to understand the real world that you are going to try to do the study in or try to explore. For example, this particular first paragraph tells us that 1, AA is a tomato retail trader, meaning that AA deals in perishable products. She's a retailer. That means that she also buys in small quantities and relatively smaller quantities and sells in the market. Number 2, AA has some level of education. Number 3, AA has a structured business arrangement. She has got suppliers. She has got even intermediaries, who is Jane. And Jane works with AA. Now, it tells you that the AA has established a very good supply chain where farmers send their produce to her. And the farmers send the produce via vehicles and comes down. But it has to come through an interaction by Jane, who is the intermediary who works for AA. So you see a fairly established firm which has got some structure of how the business relationships take place within the particular firm. This is a very small paragraph. Whenever we are doing a qualitative study, our objective is to explain the natural settings in which the study takes place. This particular study is about mobiles and micro trading. For me to be able to explain how mobiles are being used in micro trading, I need to give you the context. So the first part is the context that I've explained. Those natural settings I've explained. The next thing is tells you how she got into using the mobile phone and how and why, what she's using it for. So you see that prior to owning the mobile phone, communication between AA and Jane was constrained by distance. Limited access to Jane often contributed to poor inventory management, and where AA could be out of stock of tomatoes for a week. In such scenarios, AA had to buy from other wholesalers, and that increased her coordination costs. She was then advised by a friend to get a mobile phone for Jane and herself in order to enhance communication and reduce cost and risk of frequent long journeys. In December 2008, AA purchased a used Samsung D500 for herself and Nokia 3315 for Jane. The cost of Jane's mobile phone was deducted from her earnings with trading with AA. So it tells you the same structure I was trying to explain earlier. They are both using Tigo as a service provider. She opined that most of my customers are in the working class, meaning they do not have much time to come to the market. I therefore call or text my customers periodically and ask them if they need any tomatoes and then deliver to them at their offices before they close. It means that AA is trying to use relationship marketing and other relational strategies to be able to expand her reach in selling her products and generate more revenue by building those relationships. So you can see that from there. Mobile phone enables AA to record the contacts of her details of her customers. Other tools like calendar and alarm on the mobile phone are also used by AA. Now, this characteristic use of the mobile phone calendar and alarm and then the phone book, contact book, tells you that the level of education that AA has, which I defined earlier, is helping her business. Now, if I didn't give you the initial preamble, you would have been surprised by me saying this market woman can do this, you can do that, you can do that. Before I could establish that, I need to give you a logical chain of evidence by building the natural settings so that when you read anything after the natural settings, you can relate with it. The natural settings tell you that she deals in this particular produce. The natural settings tells you specific things that she does. All these things are defined because of the natural setting, the natural settings that I explained earlier. The last part of qualitative research that I'll point out is grounded theory. Grounded theory means that you are trying to study data in order to end up coming up with theory. Last week when we were doing theory discussions on theory, I pointed out that one way of developing a theory is by studying data. So in grounded theory, people study phenomenon or process and look at it in terms of the data in order to theorize or develop maybe a theory or an understanding through the patterns he observes. So being grounded in data means the theory is localized and dealing with specific situations like how women, micro entrepreneurs handle multiple responsibilities. So the primary question in that type of study is that okay, okay, cool. You are saying that, Prof, in this case study, Prof, in the case study, must you start with an example of A? Yes, I'll teach you how to write case studies later. So you have to start like that. So, Prof, is it a sort of literature, please? No, grounded theory means that you're actually building a theory based on the data. What theory or explanation emerges from the analysis of data collected about this phenomenon? You are studying a phenomenon. So in grounded theory research, you are trying to build a theorize from the phenomenon. And it has got its own principles. So if you want to use this, your supervisor should be good in that area. For example, you have to do this to understand the core phenomenon, the conditions that cause the phenomenon to occur, the strategies that happen in response to that conditions, and the consequences of those strategies. So in that case, the first is to ask what is the phenomenon or process you are trying to study. How do women, micro entrepreneurs, handle multiple responsibilities? Okay. So now what influenced that particular for what influence the occurrence of multiple entrepreneurs, multiple responsibilities among micro entrepreneurs? That's what you ask here. What actions were taken in response to the multiple responsibilities? What strategies are entrepreneurs using to manage our multiple responsibilities? That would be the third question you ask. And what are the outcomes of the multiple entrepreneur responsibilities that entrepreneurs have? So you ask these 4 questions in relation to this particular study, then you try to look for answers for them. And that's how you end up developing a theory that will help explain how women micro entrepreneurs handle multiple responsibilities. The first thing is to identify the phenomenon. The second thing is to identify what influence of phenomenon to occur. Then when it occurred, what strategies were put in place in response to the occurrence, and then what were the outcomes of those strategies? What were the outcomes of those strategies? Okay, most of the time, students will draw on case study. Most of the time, students will draw on case study in their study. So in practice, qualitative researchers embrace the idea of multiple realities that's being subjective, and they conduct their study with the intent of unearthing and reporting these multiple realities. They believe that the world is subjective, and that subjectivity is what you are trying to uncover. Number 2, qualitative researchers posit that the researcher is not independent from what is being researched. Knowledge is context and time dependent. And knowledge is described through the meanings attached to the phenomena study. Knowledge is described through the meaning and attached to the phenomenon being studied. Number 3, qualitative researchers try to use an inductive emergent approach. Inductive means that you look at the data to tell us stories, and then emergent, you have to know that when you're carrying out the study, some of the methodologies you choose, the data collection methods will modify, or even the study site or where you want to collect your data will be modified as the study goes on and you learn more about it. Now, and it's shaped by your experience in collecting and analyzing data. So I told you stories about how my experiences influenced the way I was collecting data. I chose fan milk, my fan milk was not available, so I had to choose a new company. So as you are going through it, your experiences can shape how the data is being collected and what data is being collected. Lastly, questions may change or emerge in the middle of the study and provide a better appreciation of the research problem. And qualitative researchers truly ignore that. With quantitative, the question that you start with is what you want to end with. With the qualitative, you should know that the questions can even change. What I mean by question is not even your main question can change, but I'm talking about in your questionnaire, new questions can come up as you're interacting with the people. And that can even or new factors, new issues can be identified or uncovered. So as you are on the field, you end up asking more questions than you thought you asked. I gave you a scenario about my qualitative study on taxi drivers. And I told you that as I was collecting more data, I realized that there were other variables that I need to take into consideration. That led to more questions. Okay. So this is what qualitative research is. Now I'm going to delve into the other part that has to do with case study research. Okay, there's one presentation that I may have to do with you, and I may have to arrange and do it with you, which is about how to collect data on the COVID period, because that's a very important post-COVID data collection. Okay. Now, in case study, what I'll try to cover here is defining a case study, designing a case study, collecting a case study, and writing out a case study. We can't do all today, so I'll just try to talk about the first 2 or 3 within the next 10 minutes, and then we'll break after that. So by 8:40, 8:45, we'll close. Okay. Now, to be able to do this particular discussions, there are 2 papers that we'll be drawing on. Paper 1 is the mobiles and micro trading activities, conceptualizing the link. I will not use them today, but next time if I'm using them, I will share the papers with you. Or maybe let me just share it right now. Okay. Okay. So the first paper has come. Let me just attach the second paper. So I've added 2 papers. 2 papers. Okay, so you can have it. I'll put the papers in the chat room so you can download them. Okay. So the paper 1 is the second paper attached, and the paper 2 is the first paper attached. Okay. So defining a case study. We look at the definition of case study earlier, where I say case study of a bounded system. And I also mentioned that case studies try to help us do an intensive analysis of a bounded system. And I mentioned that that bounded system could be a person, a group, activity, or event. Now, one thing that we need to appreciate with case studies is that all case studies will not just describe or explain the bounded system, but they can do multiple bounded systems. So you can do multiple bounded systems through detailed or in-depth data collection methods involving multiple sources, observations, interview, audiovisual material, and documents and reports. Every case study will have a case description and case-based theme. Case description is the description of the context in which the case is taking place. And then after that, you can then go into the phenomenon. So whenever you're having a case study, you have to look at where is the description of the background, the setting, the historicity, the background about how the case, that gives you an understanding about the case. Where is the background of the case? Where is the setting in the case, the natural setting, the description of the natural settings? Whenever you look at a case that you can't find in the description of the natural setting, then it's not a complete case. After describing the natural setting, then you go into the case-based themes, the things you want to study, whether you want to study computer-based learning, or you want to study leadership, or you want to study patients' perspective concerning service quality in the hospitals. Whatever you want to do, you can't do service quality in the hospitals as a case study without describing even giving us a contextual understanding of the healthcare sector in Ghana, a contextual understanding of the different type of hospitals and the type of hospital where you are even narrowing down, and then the hospital itself, giving us a good understanding about it. So the natural settings have to give us very good understanding of what is occurring and how it is occurring. Okay. This particular scenario, anti-acoustic study that we looked at earlier, the first part is the case description, the natural settings. The rest is about the phenomenon we are trying to study. Okay. I mentioned earlier that case studies are good or tend to matter depending on the questions and the contemporaneous of the things you are trying to study, the questions you have and the contemporaneous. If you don't have much control of the study, you focus much more on contemporary events that you don't have much control. That's why you may choose a case study. And then the first one being the fact that you look at the how and why questions. Okay. I also mentioned this one earlier that case studies are good for microscopic evaluation, where you can narrow down to explain how something occurred, why something is occurring. Now, case studies are also, whenever case study matters when you are exploring an intervention which less knowledge is known about it, and then you need to describe the context in which the intervention occurred, or you need to describe the intervention itself or explain the causal links within the real world interventions. Any type of study that you need to describe a context and then also describe how the intervention or the phenomenon works in the context, case study is needed. Anytime that you do a study that you realize that the natural settings need to be well described, and that natural settings can shape the phenomenon, and the phenomenon also shapes the natural settings, you want to focus on a case study. Now, when you need to explore an intervention in which less knowledge is known about, you do exploratory case study. When you want to describe the real world life context in which an intervention occurred, you are doing a descriptive case study. When you want to describe an intervention itself and how it occurred, you are also doing a descriptive case study. And then when you want to explain the causal links in real world or real life intervention, you are doing explanatory case study. So exploratory, descriptive, and explanatory tells us the different types of case studies that exist. But all of them, what is very characteristic of the descriptive case study is that descriptive case studies really needs a theory to guide the data collection. The rest, you might not be very strict on it, but a descriptive case study, you always need a theory to guide the data collection. In fact, in all studies, it's good. But a descriptive case study is usually the case itself is presented within the lens or the eyes of the theory. Lens or the eyes of the theory. So the theory should be clearly stated in advance and reviewed to form part of the base of the design of the descriptive case study. Now, there are different types of case study in terms of their numeration or their number. If you are carrying out a study in which you are doing a single case study, you are doing an extreme case, you are focusing on one particular issue to confirm or challenge a theory, or especially in an issue that people don't have people don't have much access to it, you may want to focus on a single case study. Then you also got multiple case study. Multiple case study comes up when you are trying to do a study in which you need two different data, two different cases, in order to compare or check whether the issues are replicated, or to be able to corroborate the two and then be able to get a better understanding of what is happening. So it helps you to enhance the reliability or validity of the research, because sometimes if it's only one, somebody will say that it's just an occurrence. When I gave you the example of the taxi driver, do you realize what I mentioned? I said that I went here to one, that they gave me one understanding. I went to another one, they gave me a different understanding. I went to Abosukai, they gave me a different understanding. What I have done is that all the three different places I went to, it has shaped my understanding of why taxi drivers remove the headrest from their car. That is one. Number two, I've been able to check the reliability of what I'm trying to do and the validity for it. I didn't just say that it just comes out of one perspective. If all my conclusions on the first one, then it would have been biased. By being able to collect data from different places, now I've realized that consistently, the most important one that comes up is security. Security is the first thing I realized was the core issue why people remove the headrest. Security, either from the fact that you want to be able to prevent somebody from tying your neck to the car, the headrest, or you also want to be able to make sure that you can see inside the car, so that at the end of the day, if somebody is trying to rob somebody behind the car, you can be able to identify it. Then the next issue had to come to the fact that people are also the people who drive in the evening are those who expect that when they remove the headrest, they can get more revenue. It doesn't happen to everybody, but those who drive in the evening especially, where the environment is poorly lit. So you are seeing an external variable that is actually influencing the study now. It's actually influencing my outcome. So if I didn't do the multiple, I wouldn't be able to draw out all these issues. Multiple case study help me to compare findings between one case and the other, and then be able to check whether what you are doing is not just it's not just a spurious explanation. It has been confirmed. There's replication. I can see consistency, that there is discussion. This one has a viewpoint. This one has a different viewpoint. I can have a holistic perspective of what is occurring within the phenomenon. Now, how do you design a case study? There is the 4-step approach, and then there's a 7-step approach. Can one have a case study that involves all the 3 types? No. You have to know which of the studies you are doing. What are doing? The other case studies can also use theory. But the fact is that the descriptive case study even likes to explain and outline the case based on the theory. That's what I was trying to emphasize here. So can one have a case study that involves all the 3 types? No. But I can have a case study that actually tries to, first of all, explore and then go ahead to do more to explain. But in both of them, there should be one which is dominant and driving the study. That's why you should look at the research purpose of the study. That will give you an understanding. Now, if you do an exploratory study and you are trying to still find out why something occurs, it doesn't mean that you are doing a causal or an explanatory study. You are just trying to explore why something is occurring. But if you want to do an explanatory study of why something occurs, then your causality have to be really well defined and well explained. And then you should use methodology and then data collection analysis techniques that can come to a conclusion thoroughly, that this is why something is occurring. This is what causes it to occur. These are the causal factors. But that's not what you're trying to do. Most of you will try to do exploratory studies or descriptive studies. Anyway, you have a 4-step approach: design the case study protocol, conduct the case study, analyze the case study evidence, and provide recommendations. The 7-step approach: identify the research question, determine the type of case study you want to do, select the participants, collect the data, analyze the data, compose and write a report, and evaluate the validity and reliability. Okay, so in the case study protocol, the first thing is to define the overview of the project. So you write in the document, define your overview of the project. What are you trying to do? What's the research purpose? What are the research questions or objectives? What field procedures do you need to address each of the objectives? Where is your case study questionnaire? Where is your case study? What guide are you going to use for your case study report? Like writing it out. What guide are you going to use? Who are your respondents? Where are you collecting your data from? All this will come together in your case study protocol. That will guide you to go and collect your data. So you conduct your case study either using interviews, observation, and documents or audiovisual. All of this will have captured in your protocol, telling us why you are using any of the, why are you using interview? What do you want to observe? Why are you using documents? What documents would you want to target, private or public? Audiovisual. What information can you get which is in the audio format or visual format, either from the company's website, from WhatsApp groups, or from online platforms in social media. Then you analyze the case. What strategy are you going to use in analyzing the case? And then lastly, the conclusions, how are you going to, you develop your conclusion, recommendations, and implications based on the case. Okay, that will be the last part. Yeah. If my topic is the benefit of filling stations in public sector, the case of preset school, what do I do? Please talk. Okay. Benefit of filling stations. What in my filling station? The benefit of fuel stations. Filing systems. Oh, sorry. Filing systems. And I didn't see it well. Filing systems. Because of the way you said, okay, filing systems in public sector. A case study of preset. Okay. Filing systems. Have you found literature on filing systems? I don't know. What are you finding literature on filing systems? But if you want to talk about the benefits of organizing, and then organizing data and structuring data, or in the workplace, then that is what it is. Because what you are trying to do is a workplace study, and you are trying to say that workplace filing of documents in workplace is also what you are trying to say. It will be better for you to go and look in Emerald and some of the platforms for literature on workplace organization. How do you organize the workplace filing, managing documents in workplace, managing electronic documents in workplace, managing physical documents in workplace. This will be where your study will come from. Sometimes you have to be very careful of the titles that you have, because if you don't take care, when you search based on just the title you have written, you will not get anything. So you ask yourself, where does it belong to? Filing systems belong to workplace organization or document handling in the workplace. So you end up reading on literature on document handling, document management in the workplace. Okay, so the 7-step approach, you identify your research question to study, you want to study. That'll be your unit of analysis. Then you identify whether you want to go single or multiple. Then you also identify the boundary, the type of data you want to collect, and the boundary. How far are you going? Sometimes some respondents may be in the past. So how far are you going? Some respondents may even be in the present, but they are not with the company right now. So you have to ask yourself, how far are you going? In terms of event, in terms of times, in terms of processes, how far are you going? How far are you going? Okay. Then you also have, you collect your data, you define which data collection methods you want to use. Observation, documents, and audiovisual interviews. And you are going to use it to collaborate. Collaborate means that you are bringing them together. And bringing them together to be able to answer something. Bringing them together to be able to answer something. Okay. Then analyze the data and then compose a rich report and ensure validity and reliability. Sorry about the fonts being big. I'll look into it. Okay. So then collecting the data. There are several factors that influence the collection of the data. One being the research gap, purpose, objectives, and questions. These are different from the challenges that could happen in data collection. Number 2, the theory and conceptual framework you have. Number 3, whether you are doing multiple or case study. Number 4, the boundary, what is available, what is accessible. And number 5, the skills and resources you have as the researcher. So number 1, you need to have a questionnaire. Your questionnaire will guide you. Your questionnaire will be built based on what you want to do. So in process, this is how a simple good questionnaire could look like. you have to have a section for your field notes, the time, the date, and the description and the natural settings as you go there. Then you have a section that introduces the study to the interviewer. Maybe you explain the key issues you're trying to do. You're coming from the University of Ghana, what are the key issues you want to look into. So those ones have to be really defined. And then you go into the demographics of the respondent. Some authors bring the demographics, or some researchers bring the demographic as the last question. The demographic data on the respondent and then that of the organization. Don't ask obvious questions that you know. Are you male or female? You are looking at it with your eyes and asking, are you male or female? Don't ask obvious questions that you can obtain from the website of the company. So what is your company name? If you didn't know the name, why are you even sitting there? Who was the name of the MD, the managing director? You should have obtained that information from the website. So there are some information that you can get from the company's website, brochures, or other documents. Get them before you go and collect your data, because you have a very short time to collect data. If you ask questions on what is all relevant, you actually lose the person. And then the main questions. What are the main questions based on the variables you are studying? If you have a variable on attendance, you need to ask your questions. You have a concept where you want to study on peer influence. You need to ask questions on peer influence and their views concerning the issue. Okay. You note that some of your questions may be simple yes or no. Some of your questions may be open questions. Some of your questions may fill in the blanks or true or false. So you should know that all these questions could exist. And then you also have other questions that may come up as you're collecting the data, other questions that may come up as you're collecting the data. Then lastly, you end up having the conclusion where you review answers. So you go through what the person said. This is different from transcription. It's more about the notes you have made, and then you get clarification from the person, whether you said this and this, I hope I understood you right. Okay. If you want to record, you should ask permission from the person before you record. Okay. So now, apart from the questionnaire, you should ask yourself that what can influence your research study? The first thing has to do with what is the impact of mobile phones on micro-trading activity? That's your research question you want to answer. So that one, you can find it in paper one, the one I sent it to you right now. So you end up realizing that this paper has three aspects. How do market traders use mobile phones? What benefits did you obtain? And then the third, what is the impact of the benefits on using mobile phones in micro-trading activity? So that's a research questions will even tell you the type of data that you need to collect. From this particular set of questions, I know that I need questions on how market women use their mobile phones. I need questions on what benefits do they gain. I need questions from what impact. So I can use the theory to guide me to understand the benefits, guide me to understand the impact, and guide me to understand the market traders. I use the theory or literature review to guide me to do so. Then you also have, so because I want to use the theory to guide me, I end up showing the theory. So the theory then has here, doing trade, benefit, impact. That tells you about the 4 stages. So the mobile phones are used for stages of trading, and then the benefits, used to this benefit, used to this impact. So those ones can even inform my study. And this means that I have questions on what does the market woman do during pre-trade, during trade and post-trade. What benefits, what type of benefit? The benefits, I've got some, I will listen to her all right, but I'll try to categorize as she's telling me. If the woman tells me that, oh, now I've been able to reach more people, I've received as a strategic benefit. Oh, but the relationship between me and my customers have improved. It is relational benefits. I've reduced cost. Now I don't have to travel so much. It is operational benefits. So you see, as the person is telling you, you can even categorize some of them as you are hearing them. But you have to get the words verbatim. So that's why we advise you to record. Okay. So if you look here, this is about case B, and I'll round up around here. Okay, so you have here, maize is a seasonal product that requires cost-saving techniques in its trading activities. The old dry maize is preferred to the fresh one. For this reason, planting and harvesting are well documented, are well planned by farmers. Maize wholesalers buy from farmers in the villages and sell to retailers in Accra. Grace is a wholesaler who has 4 retailers in Accra. She has a primary school level education and learned the trade from her mother. This is the context that we're trying to explain, the context that we're trying to explain. Now, based on this context, we can say that Grace uses two Nokia 3310 mobile phones and subscribes to MTN Tigo network. Mobile phone has made it easy to carry out her transactions more efficiently. She does not have to travel frequently. So you are seeing relational benefits and financial benefits there. She does not have to travel frequently to do her business unless she has to go around to collect payments. This she does once in a month. Grace explains that I don't need to come to Accra to supply maize. All I do is take orders on the phone and hire a truck to send the community. I do not have to put my life at risk by making unnecessary journeys. Mobile phones make Grace more accessible to her customers, thereby enhancing confidence in trading with her. Grace mentions that supply of maize is controlled by monitoring prices on the market. Prices determine how goods should be delivered at a point in time. I'm able to send simple text messages to inform customers on the maize prices and delivery times. Customers are also able to monitor the trucks that bring the commodities to Accra, to the markets in Accra. This enables the customers to plan for contingencies. This is very, very interesting. Okay, so a good case would all have to have a structure. So if you look into the case, we have comments coming from Grace. This is quotations coming from Grace. The first part of the case was the case, listen very carefully. The first part of the case was a case description. The second part is the phenomenon. And within the phenomenon, she tells you what she used the mobile phone for and how she uses it, and then gives you actual quotations on the benefits she has obtained. In structuring a case study, you should have a case study context, firm profile, then the background to the phenomenon, then case phenomenon, what occurred in the case itself, So this is where I will end it. I just want to show you one of the cases. Let's look at anti questions, so we have seen them. So let's look at the other paper that I gave you, Let's look at that one. There's some. So open to paper 2, the one on e-commerce, open to paper 2. Okay, open to paper 2. So this paper is what I'm talking about, open to this one. Now, do you see what's happening here? This is, we mentioned earlier that every good case study should have the case study. Okay, I just want to do something so that I can share my screen. Okay. Okay, so let me share my screen. Now look at it, you can see the whole screen now. Now on one side, you have this one, the firm profile here. And then look at what it's saying here. You should have the firm profile. So the firm profile is there. Can you see that? Good. Then from the firm profile, Richie, what can you get what? The papers, I put them in the platform. I put it here. I shared the papers with you already. I've shared all these papers with you. I shared it earlier. I'm sharing it again. I'm sharing the papers again. Check it. I've shared all the papers again. So the e-commerce has come. That was the one I've shared. And then mobiles have come. So look at the e-commerce paper. Do you realize that what he's telling us we should do? We should have a case firm profile. So you can see a firm profile. Then from the firm profile, discussing the firm, we have business resource development, how the firm began, background to the phenomenon, precursor to the phenomenon. This is about selling cars online. So if you look at it, remember what I just said, background to the phenomenon, precursor to the phenomenon, so the business startup. Then finding a supplier online, first purchase and first customer, can you see it? Precursor to the phenomenon, first instance of the occurrence, initial perspectives. Then you go into the case, what you really want to study, e-commerce capability. That's what you said you want to do. So look at a case, and the case can be structured by your theory or by specific events that you are going to describe, concepts and processes, quotes from respondents, constraints and challenges, outcome and impact, and future outlook. Look at what's happening here. You have got e-commerce capabilities. Then you have the event, informational e-commerce capability. The timeline for it has been given. He will discuss. So the quotation then comes. It describes what happened there. Then from that, it goes to the second occurrence of the activity. Then after that, then you see there are quotations inside. From a memorandum of understanding, I knew that this is a quotation. So you can see the quotation was indented. So that you can see that this is the person's quotation that he's putting across. Okay. So there are quotations from there. After the quotations, you go on again. Then look at this section, addressing resources to address constraints. Managing resources to address constraints. Look at it here. Sorry, constraints and challenges. Sorry. So you have the same thing, addressing, managing resources to address constraints. Okay. And then addressing payment constraints. Addressing payment constraints. And then impact of e-commerce activity. So that's what you see here. So that's a similar thing that the story you can tell. You take our time and build the story so that you can have a better understanding of it. So thank you very much. Today we have learned how to develop a case study.